So guys, I'm super excited to have Kimberly McKay on today. Kimberly and I connected via social media many years ago, and we've become great friends, even though we have maybe video chatted and we've talked a number of times, but most of what we've done has been online. We've actually never gotten an opportunity to, to have a solid physical presence, be in the same room or be able to hug, but that's going to get fixed eventually once COVID is complete. But I'm super excited to have you on the show today, Kim, because you are just an amazing individual, and I've been a big fan of yours for a lot of years. You do so much, and I am excited for everybody to learn about you. I was recently on your podcast, A Novel Thought. If you all have not seen or listened to that podcast, you definitely need to, because Kim does a phenomenal job, has some very interesting guests on that show. Me, I probably was not up to that standard of amazing people that you have, but I appreciate you having me on there. But I'm so grateful that you took the time to join me today. And we're going to have this both on the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. So Kim, welcome to the Ripple Effect.
Thank you so much. And I got to tell you, you're very much a part of what I do. Anything I do on A Novel Thought centers around people that are doing things in this world that uplift others or make change. And yes, is novel, in the main vein of literary writing, reading. Yes. So obviously there's that because you have your book, but it's not always someone that is literary connected. It's somebody who's doing something novel, something new. And you, my friend, do both. So that's why you're like one of my favorite podcasts on there, because you talk about how you're going to change the world around you. And I love that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, you're definitely doing the same. So I think that's why we hit it off originally. So you are an author. We want to dive into that. You're also an instructor at OU. And I definitely want to learn about that because I know you're super passionate about that. And that's a relatively recent opportunity, which I'm fascinated by. And you actually have some screenplays that have been, earmarked for potential movies, right? So there's so much to uncover. Let's start with the instructor aspect, right? Let's talk about that. So you're an instructor at OU. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and what that class or classes that you're teaching about are about?
It is a class that basically covers writing in everything from creative writing to journalism. And journalism has different aspects when it comes to creative media production, when it comes to broadcast journalism, print journalism, when it comes to PR, advertising, any type of writing form these students will do to the public as pertaining to consumers or listeners or viewers or readers, pardon me, any type of writing or shape or form that takes, I get to teach them about. And so I get to, my background is in marketing and media. I've written a few books and I have done a couple screenplays. And I've also done some journalism when it comes to writing for feature articles and things like that. So I feel like it was almost kind of like a God thing. I was actually one night just praying, going, am I supposed to give this up? Because writing, or anything creative is like 10 steps forward, 50 steps back, 100 steps forward, 1,000 steps back. And it's just this perpetual seesaw that we're always on, but we do it because we're passionate about it and we love it. And that's our God-given talent. And it's something we want to share with the world, whether it's writing or photography, whether it's speaking, that's also creative. You have to be creative when you're a speaker.
Yeah.
And so I'm praying this prayer one night, and then OU calls and they're like, hey, Kim, we've got this writing class we wanted you to teach. And I'm like, okay, God. All right. Well, I had always said, I know. And I would have said, I'm never going back to school. I would never be a teacher. Like, you couldn't pay me enough to be a teacher. And of course they don't pay teachers that much. So that was kind of God's funny joke to go, yeah, I know you're not going to get paid much. And I know you never wanted to go back to school, but this is where I'm putting you. So now what's really cool is that, it started last semester. So I had half of a normal semester and then the other half was COVID. That was crazy. And I was like, wow, what a first semester. This semester's taken on a whole different look because now it's the second part. It's the back end of COVID. And these kids, it's affected them. I think I've told you this before. It's like a whole different can of worms that have just popped out and just, spewed over the mental health of our students, of our families. And so I'm part counselor, part mentor, part instructor. And I realized that the background that I was given because of, being a survivor of a traumatic event and having friends who've suffered things, I've been able to go through counseling and I've been able to help them in ways. And OU has a great behavioral mental health program, directing them toward that, asking them if they're journaling, encouraging them because they are writers. Are you writing
Yeah.
down your blessings? People that have social anxiety, they've just been even more closed in, afraid to even talk to people. And
Sure.
some of these assignments I give these kids is pick up a phone and call, and they don't turn the assignment in because they don't know how to talk to people anymore. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking, but I'm getting rewarded at the end, because now at this end of the semester, and I'm going to start tearing up, I get thank you letters. And I don't know about you, but I didn't write my instructors or professors thank you letters in college. I might have like 5 years or 10 years later, but not like 6 weeks later. And I'm getting these notes and I'm like, okay, God, that's why I'm here. It wasn't about
That's
writing
right.
at all. I mean, I've grown as a writer from teaching this class, don't get me wrong, but it was about being there and rippling in these kids' lives.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, I'm a big believer that people get put in your path for a very specific reason. And obviously you got put in theirs to be that contributor at this time in their life. And it's a critical, important time, right? I have a son that's just now graduated from college, and I know how challenging that can be emotionally, right? In terms of that time period. And especially you combine everything that these kids are going through with COVID. I can't imagine how difficult that's got to be for them, but to have a teacher like you that is come into their life, that is looking beyond the course content or the grades to actually care about them as a person, I think is just amazing. And God definitely puts you in their path for a reason, because you're a gift that they needed for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm the one that's honored through it all. I mean, they walk in and you can just see the body posture. I mean, most of them have online classes, and my class might be the only one they have in class. And so it's their only chance to have social
Wow.
interaction. And, maybe some have a few others, but it's far and few between. And some days I would just start the class out with, let's go around the room and tell me what your worst, most disgusting food is if you didn't want to eat it. And they're like, what? And I did it to get their attention, because anybody can say, what's your favorite food? Let's go around and talk about it. I did something that would be opposite of what they would expect, because then they go, oh, now I've got to think and I've got to speak. And this lady's crazy. But it breaks the ice. And, a lot of them now are like, oh, Mrs. McKay, do you have Insta? Do you know what Insta is? Because now they want to connect on social media. And I'm like, honey, I had Insta before you were even out of diapers. Like, come on, how ancient do I look? But because I'm quirky, they think I'm old or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you saying that, you might like lose your street cred right there, because Instagram hasn't been around that long.
I know, but Polaroids have, right?
Social, I mean, like you just hit them back and like, hey, do you know what MySpace is? No, boom, there you go.
That's true. That's true.
I started social. That's what.
I was the founder of the first person signing on. I wasn't.
That's exactly right. Me and the Tom guy are still friends, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it sounds like you do. You and I have actually never gotten an opportunity to meet in person, but we've had this great online connection for a long time, and I've been very appreciative of that. And one of the things that I do through my work is I created a function called the 8-minute ripple, which was originally designed to be an event for networking for non-networking people. And think of those students that walk in that first day, think of business people or people in their professional careers that are in an event, but they don't really want to be there. And they're really not sure why they came, but somebody told them they had to network, or they have to go find a job, or their boss said, get out there and spread the word. And most networking functions are so uncomfortable and difficult, and it's challenging. And people put on these airs, and you got to have this elevator pitch, and people are just they hate that process. And I personally hate that process. I wrote a book on networking, and I can't stand that process. But the funny thing about that was that we created this event so that you couldn't come with business cards. You couldn't tell an elevator pitch. You couldn't say anything that denotes status. And we used these questions, what I call ripple connection questions, as a way for bridging conversation. And so what's amazing is when you get people to even go with like you said, that food that, is the most disgusting food that they've ever eaten. There's a story behind that, right? And that story gets people comfortable with one another and engaging. And in a group dynamic like a class, it's just amazing, right? But because those things are that's the good stuff that you learn, and you just don't pick those things up. And it's, whether you're doing it in school or whether you're doing it in a work setting, those little things can make a huge difference between how people respond and react and how they communicate and how big a contributor they are to whatever environment that they're in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it lets them know that when you have a random question like that and you hear someone else's answer, you're like, oh yeah, I totally can relate to that. And it does connect them. Like you said, it gives them a bridge. So that's cool. That's cool that you do that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that offline some point because I really, this is about you, not my stuff. But there's
Oh,
definitely some things we've done at the university level that could be advantageous to your class. I think it'd be
absolutely.
fun to recreate some of that. But I love the fact that you do that. That's really thinking outside the box, and what a great way to get people engaged and talking. And so, it doesn't surprise me. You're a natural rippler anyway. I mean, you're amazing at everything that you do.
I don't know
So
about
you do that. You are in marketing day to day for a career path, right? From a a job perspective, but then you're also this mysterious author of many books, and you have 2 new books coming out at the beginning of the year. Is that right? In the
one,
first
actually.
quarter?
Yeah, I was going to have one book. And then I did a podcast with Chrissy Dallas. She's an amazing YA author. I'm hooked on her books. I go back to my giddy teenage years when I read her stuff, but it's for adults too. Like I love reading her stuff from an adult perspective, and it's just
Is YA
engaging.
young adult?
Yes,
Okay, I'm just
but
making sure.
I'm young at heart, so anyone that's young at heart, she doesn't write for the teenager. Although they can connect, these adult women are and men are also connecting. And so she was talking about, to get to my point. Sorry, I go on tangents sometimes.
No, no, keep
Talking
tangents are
about
great. I love them.
tangents are great. She said, and I asked her, what advice would you give someone looking to write? And she said, I would just say, if you don't love it, don't do it. If you're writing about something that just isn't there for you and it's a struggle, she was like, put it down. And so as I'm writing this new book for 2021, which happened to be a script that I had already written and I was converting it to a book. So I know that's
Wow.
backwards, but there's a story behind that and I'll get to that later if we get to it. But I'm trying to convert this to a book and I just couldn't do it. And it just was like laborious. And I've never faced that type of situation. Usually I write and boom, it just comes out and it's done. And so then her words came back to me and I'm like, why am I trying to do this? So I started another book, which is a character I had on the back burner of my mind. And within a day, I had 30,000 words. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
this is better. So now I have Interlaced Souls, which will be releasing in 2021. It'll be the 4th book of the Spiritual Gift series, which is a series that people are just falling in love with. So I'm excited about that.
That's fantastic. Well, so can you tell us about some of your other books? I mean, that comes out in 2021, and like you said, I want to come back and circle back to the screenplay aspect because I know you've written several of those, and this one is coming out as a book in early next year. But what about your other books? I mean, how did that get started? How did you find your traction there? And obviously, you've got several that are out. So, I mean, you're super successful in being able to get these out to the public, and people really are responding to it. I know my wife has read a few of your books and she loved them, and so as you know, we have one that's coming to her for a gift for Christmas. So
Yes, I got that to you, right?
yeah, you did. Oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah,
want to
you
make
got it.
sure because I
You
mail
got
out.
mine, right? I just want to make sure.
Oh crap! Did I get that to him? Yes. Okay. So thank you for saying that, and I'm glad she likes them. So
Yeah.
I've been writing since I was 3 in my head, just creating stories. Right. Some people are just born storytellers, and so when I'm creating a picture on paper with crayon, it was a story, just like kids are. They're naturally drawn to draw and to color and to write in scribbles. By
Sure.
the time I was 4, I couldn't spell, but I'm typing on my parents' typewriter, and they have a picture of me in a big Gilligan's Island floppy hat and a bathing suit, profile, typing on their typewriter, and no one could read what I was writing because I couldn't spell. But it was a ton of syntax and characters on a page, and to me, I knew what it was. So by the time I was in 4th grade, I'm writing, and my teacher asked us to do this project for class. It's in Virginia, Woodbridge, Virginia, where I was at that time. My dad was military, so we moved all over. And I was with the Prince William County School District, and we had to write this book. And she loved mine enough that she submitted it to an educational contest, and it won Best Author. And so at that point, I'm sitting in the library reading, all these amazing books from that time that we all probably did. Ramona, reading my Ramona.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I want to do this. This is like what I was born to do. And I still have that book, by the way. It's
Yeah.
called The Unicorn's 5 Wishes. Okay, that's really, really silly. But but it started me on a path where I'm like, at some point I'm going to do this. I went through a series of counseling sessions with a counselor after a traumatic event happened to me in my 20s. Actually, the traumatic event happened when I was 15. The counseling happened when I was in my 20s. And I ended up just writing about my story third person, but I fictionalized it. And I was just going to give it to my counselor. And my counselor was like, Kim, at this point, I'm ready to release you because the last step in therapy is writing about something third person.
Wow.
And you've already done it. And honey, this is good enough that it needs to be a book. And that's where I was like, oh yeah, I was going to end up doing that. But because of what had happened to me at 15, I was in a tailspin for many, many years. I lost sight of my dreams. I was just trying to make it every day, right? I don't know how serious you want to get on this or not, but Finding Kylie is my first book, and I was date raped at the age of 15. Thought I was pregnant. Thank the good Lord I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I'd always wondered what would have been my life been like, and that child's life been like. And so that
Yeah.
book, Finding Kylie, is that child's life if I had had her. And both women, the mother and the child, are me. You see traits of a victim and a survivor, and the daughter becomes a survivor the mother never could, and ends up having really good closure. And you cry at the end because it's one of those books where, in fact, that's how the first script happened. A friend of mine who's a film producer in London called, and he was like, first, I'm cursing you because I was up all night and I couldn't put it down. Second,
Wow.
I'm cursing you because you named the main character who's the bad guy after me. His name's John Schwab, and he's also on the podcast. And he'll tell you on the podcast that I contacted him for the script. That wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
We were just talking about it. And then I was like, you think it would be a good movie? He was like, we need to do this. And I'm like, okay. So it's kind of a
Wow.
collaborative conversation. And that's how Finding Kylie, the script, was born. But Finding Kylie was just going to be it until I figured out what I wanted to write. And then readers from all over started emailing me what happened to X, because I can't, mention X because it would give too much away. Basically there's something that happens at the end that the daughter finds out about the father, and they wanted to know that part of it, and I wasn't ready to give that part of it because that means I would have had to put myself in the shoes of my attacker or the attacker, and I wasn't ready to go there. But
Yeah.
I kept getting letters and letters and letters, so I called my first series, which is called the Forgiveness series, an accidental series, because it was just going to
Wow.
be one book. But I kept getting too many letters, which meant I had to forgive my attacker, and I had to put myself in the shoes of someone who didn't earn forgiveness, who didn't ask my forgiveness. But I know through God's grace, we all can have forgiveness. And so Facing Redemption was born because it's a man who is the worst of the worst, but with the chance to face redemption. So even the worst of us with a changed heart have the chance to face redemption. And so that's what this book is. It's a continuation of a love story that starts with Finding Kylie, brings it through to fruition, and it also talks about a daughter and an unwanted father and their journey to find closure, maybe not a relationship, but closure. And then there's some supporting characters from that get their own story. And so there's 4 books in the Forgiveness series, really good series, but it was when I was a first time writer. And you make a lot of newbie mistakes. I was traditionally published for the first book. That traditional publisher wasn't a very ethical one. Let's just put it that way. And I'm going to keep it there and leave it.
Yeah.
And so I had to get my rights back from her in order to continue the rest. And I just decided I don't want to trust a traditional publisher anymore. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I've got graphic design. I can do the covers. I've got marketing background. Publishers mostly want you to do your own marketing anyways, especially now that everything's so digital. They don't have the funds that
Yeah.
they would anymore. I mean, right?
Yep. Yep.
So I went out on my own and started that series, and then it just evolved. And so here we are almost, 9-10 books later. And so Forgiveness series, a standalone with Second Chances, and now the Spiritual Gift series, which I feel like that's where people need to start, because that is where I've elevated from becoming a freshman to, I think, a senior. Every student
Yeah.
evolves. And the Spiritual Gift series, I favor those because they're my best work. But the Forgiveness series I favor because they come from such a tender place. That's the
Yeah.
longest answer ever.
That was a great a great answer. And I appreciate that background because it really gives us a perspective of kind of how this started, but ultimately what has fueled it throughout the process. And I think that's amazing. I mean, it's, 9 or 10 books, plus more to come, is just amazing. What an incredible body of work, for one, but at the end of the day, it's also look where you've taken it, right? All these different avenues that really speak to everybody at a different, set of levels, right? That I think is pretty incredible. So congratulations on that success and where it's going. So some of these have been opted for screenplays. So anything in like the works, like will we see anything on the small or large screen at some point, do you think? Or
I hope so. Finding Kylie started a screenwriting bug for me. And when John was talking about creating it into a screenplay, he was like, Kim, you really need to learn how to write as a script writer. He's like, authors don't make much off of the screenplays. You and I are going to sit down and write this together. So he and I basically took every other chapter, and he's going to kill me for saying this, but he writes like a girl. And so, I mean, it was like his voice was my voice, and everything I would have done on the chapters that he converted, I was like, I would have done that, except he did it better because he has the background with film and script writing. And it was a beautiful evolution to see something like this come to light. We did a hard read at one of the universities here that Francis Ford Coppola uses for hard reads and projects to get his, visuals worked out. And so we raised money through a Kickstarter to have them do what's called a hard read. And that way we would know something on paper is great, but does it work off the paper? And these amazing college drama students, I mean, I was in tears by the time they were done. Just seeing your baby like that, even performed on that level. So that kind of started it. And, you know, he warned me it's going to take 10 to 11 to 12 years. Things like this don't happen overnight unless it's just a random occurrence. You just don't hit it lucky. It's through hard work and depending on the market, right? What's of interest in the market. Like if somebody wanted to do something with vampires now, that's not of interest because that was 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been of interest. You would have had to hit that 5 years prior. It's all about, you know, what's in the pipeline and what's of interest. And so that was the first one. Then I've got another friend named Ron Newcomb, which I also interviewed. He's a film director, actor. He's got a lot of film connections here in the US. And so he also likes my writing. It was just like, Kim, you know, you've got to start bringing me more stuff. I would like to start pitching your stuff to friends and just maybe be a connecting point for you, kind of like Steve the Rippler. And so, you know, it ended up being, I converted 2 of my books to screenplays. And then Erin Cahill, which is an actress on Hallmark, When Scarecrows Sing, she's been in that one. She's been in a lot, actually. She's been in Beverly Hills Chihuahua too. She's a Power Ranger, the Pink Power Ranger. She does a lot of Comic-Con events. She read Endless Possibilities, which is the first book in the Spiritual Gift series, and basically reached out and said, I need this. We need to figure out how to get this in front of Hallmark.
Wow.
And so she put me under option for a year contract to try to get it sold to Hallmark. But Hallmark at that time wasn't into killing grandmothers, spoiler alert. And so it was really before Hallmark Movies and Mysteries kind of started becoming more of a thing. And so while that option has expired, she still is a proponent for my work and has been pushing my work, and anything new that I have, she's like, send it to me. And so then meantime, rounding back to Ron Newcomb, he had a friend who's greenlit. What greenlit means, you're accepted because you've sold something to someone at some point, and you're on a list of people that are good people that you want to buy things or hear things from. He can go in and pitch to people that I can't reach. He's also a film agent. So his name is Doug, and Ron put us together. And so Doug read 4 of my scripts and was like, yep, let's get these under contract and let's move. So right now they're in front of Hallmark. I don't know if they're going to move or not. They're not Hallmark-esque. They're not the 2-dimensional, it snows and they kiss, or they have a snowball fight or they put, you know, whipped cream on your nose. All those are great things. I love Hallmark. Mine are they're just a little bit different. And I'm sure your wife can tell you they're just such a different voice that I don't think people know what to do with them sometimes. But
well, you know, hopefully they'll wake up and realize that they need to, you know, embrace that as well. Right now, Hallmark is on our TV like nonstop, I think.
I love Hallmark. It is especially during COVID. I don't know about you, but there's so much crap in the world that Hallmark just brings me so much peace and joy. And I feel like the books would be a perfect alignment for that reason, because they do offer a message of hope and peace. And we're all broken, and I focus on some broken people, don't get me wrong. But there is a message of hope for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, I know they will, you know, they will embrace it. And eventually, you know, we're going to see, at some point I'll be having to go through multiple agents in order to get a hold of you for the, you know, the next interview. Cause
no,
well,
you have my cell phone.
That's true. Yeah. So, you know, I've got the insider track. That's pretty awesome. Well, that whole experience is I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that'll be inspirational for our listeners and people that'll watch this video. I'm curious for those that are out there that are curious about the, the writing process. What's the advice that you tend to give to your students and or people that come up and say, gosh, I want to write a book, or I want to, I've got an idea. How do I go forward?
First of all, make sure you have a day job. Right? Don't quit your job. I see so many people that go, I just quit my job and I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, oh, that just gut wrenches. So first of all, keep your job or have a job that you can live off of. But I mean, just write it. So many people sit back and go, oh, I've always wanted to do that. And I'm like, what's stopping you? Well, I just don't know how to do it. I'm like, get a laptop, open up Word document and just spew. I mean, just get it out there, get your thoughts down, because at some point you lose it. And you need to make sure you're at least getting it on paper, whatever the form is, whether it's digital or the real thing. At that point, once you have something down on paper, that's when you're going to sit there and refine it and rework it. Read other authors that you're fans of to make sure that your work is lining up with that type of genre. If you're a fantasy writer, go read some Tolkien. If you're a Christian author, go read some people like Chrissy Dallas. She's well, it depends on what kind of Christian like pushing a message in your face, which I'm not a fan of. I have one that kind of borderlines that, but the character, it's just a situation where it was needed for that character. None of my books push a message. So if you're a person that likes to push a message, go find authors that do that. If you're a Christian writer who just wants to put a clean message out there with boundaries, go read people that reflect that and understand what they do and how they do it, so that you can understand content and flow and dialogue and action, actionable items, and how they all come together. And then if you want to go traditional, start querying, learn what a query letter is. Just take it one step at a time. But the first and main thing is just get it down. Don't sit back and go, well, I wished, or what if. Just write. Just write.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you ever saw this movie with Sean Connery called Finding Forrester. But when people ask me about the writing process, he has a line in there that is just, I've used it. I had to borrow it because I love it so much. But you write your first edition with your heart, and then you write your second edition with your head, right? But the whole point is you just start, right? You just get going. And you go until you stop, and then you come back to it. And the process is what you make of it and how you want to make it. But I always loved it because the magic of just that creativity, that aspect, that value that you bring in terms of getting thoughts formulated into words and words onto paper is pretty significant. And so I'm very impressed with all that you've done with your books, and I'm really inspired by it, because ultimately that's really where I want to go. When you were talking about the little girl in the floppy hat, that was me. We had a typewriter. I would just type stuff, and I had these great stories I would make up as a kid.
Love it.
And then somewhere along the lines, it's kind of funny. I had a ninth grade English teacher, and who was just not super kind or supportive. And we were I was in his class for English, and then I was in his class for creative writing. And he said, after one of my pieces, I remember writing, and I was super proud of it. I had written, I'd read it to my parents, and my dad was always very positive about it. But I shared this piece, and I said, this is what I'm turning in tomorrow. And I rarely shared things like that, which was pretty amazing, kind of scary at the time to share it, but then to get the response I did from my dad. And so he kind of looked onto that assignment, like with great interest about what grade I would get, because the whole component was very creative. And so this is ninth grade, and I get it back. It's an end of the school kind of situation. And he basically wrote, like, you should never probably ever pursue writing.
No.
But he put it in writing that he did. I mean, he put it on my paper. Like,
I hope you save that. I hope you save that paper and you stick it on your wall.
Well, it's kind of funny. So I should have. I didn't. I actually I crumpled it up, threw it away, and then my dad made me go find it and show him what he wrote. And of course, my dad went nuts. Went to meet with him and explain, if that was the kind of feedback you'd give as a creative writing teacher, you should never write. You fast forward like 4 years, I'm a senior in high school, and there was a economic creative writing class that was trying to tie the times back in the Reagan years. That's how old I am.
Wow.
But about how the
You're old.
economic challenges of where we were as a country and how that affected small business. And everybody, you could approach it any way you wanted, but essentially it was really designed to be a kind of a formal paper kind of thing, right? But
Hmm.
it was a statewide contest, and it was who could explain the challenges of economics. And I realized at that point the best way to explain any scenario is to be a storyteller. So I
Yeah.
started with this story of a young, couple, the middle-aged couple that owned a convenience store, and the impact that the economy was having on them as not only individuals that were the entrepreneurs, but also how it was affecting their families, and sort of the cascade, kind of how it rippled out, even though I didn't call it a ripple at that point. And I won the whole thing, like got a scholarship off of it. It was like
That's
kind of a cool
awesome.
deal. My dad, who, at the time was, he's not like that. He's not very vindictive, but he is like, I want you to march over to that creative writing teacher,
Hmm.
because he was still teaching at the high school. And I want you to just do nothing but show him. Don't say a word. Just put it on his desk
I
and
love
show
your
him that you
dad.
won.
I love your dad.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So, but that process, that was the freest I've ever been, is that writing aspect,
Hmm.
is that it's one of the most empowering things that you can do. And, you're clearly an example of that.
Well, I don't know what kind of example I am, but I mean, it just feels so good when you wake up and you have this idea. I mean, I get a lot of my ideas through dreams, and I wake up and I'm like, all right, I have song lyrics that pop in my head, I have poetry, and I have scenes, whether it's screenplay or book. And I'm like, I got to get it down. And I don't always write it down. And then I'm like, dang it. But I mean, it is empowering to go, okay, that is a gift that was given to me, and I've got to use it somehow. And when you get reader feedback with, oh my gosh, I love these characters, I'm not ready to give them up, then I know I've done my job well, because they're my pretend friends between the pages, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And I,
absolutely.
I grew up with a pretend friend named Kim, K apostrophe IM, which is my name. Nobody else knows that in the world except now you and everybody on this.
And everybody else. That's
Nobody
awesome.
knows now. But someone had tried to kill me when I was 3. It was a neighbor. Okay, this is like way too much information. She like got over me, straddled me, and she had red hair, and she was not a very nice little girl. I was 3, she was like 6, and she put a water hose over my face and tried to drown me. And I still remember the water bubbles like coming over me, and I couldn't breathe. And the next thing I know, my sister walks out and she yanks her. I mean, I know that she was yanked off of me. I didn't know how until afterwards. But after that, I had a pretend friend who was red haired, and she was a mean person, and she would always try to do things to me. And I named her Kim. And eventually I became friends with her, and she became nice. I think that was my brain's way of working out what
Yeah.
happened to me and making it okay and giving me closure. And so I've always had these storylines from that timeline, because I always had these creative like ways and weaves and webs of working scenarios out. So if anything, that helped me because it gave me an extraordinary way to work things out in my brain. So
Yeah.
that's a
Well,
long
I mean,
story.
I've got several friends that are authors, and almost everybody shares that same experience, where that has been something significant has happened in their life, some traumatic, some otherwise, right? And they've utilized their ability to work that out in a story form to sort of make sense of whatever it is, the scenario. And so it's an incredibly cerebral process, in terms of the concept of writing, but there's also this huge emotional component that when you're actually contributing, your words to paper, and then you're putting it in front of somebody,
Mhm.
that's a big leap of faith, and it's incredibly scary.
It is. I think with each one, it gets easier, though. I'm sure, as you know, reviews on Amazon are always fun. That's all I'm going to say. Either people love me or hate me. There's nothing really in between. Um, you know, it is what it is.
Well, let's shift gears for just a second as we, get closer to wrapping up. I mean, one of the things that I think is pretty amazing is just the way our friendship has kind of evolved and where it started, us just connecting on social. And I had to go back and I was really trying to rack my brain as to how you and I initially connected. And I know it was on Twitter, but I think you actually made a comment about the writing process, and it was just random that I reached out to you. And I think we started interacting that way. But I was really, and I'm always fascinated because I don't consider myself a great writer, although eventually one day I will find just pure time to do nothing but write. And that's my life goal eventually. But I always recognize how supportive you are to other people on social platforms, because you're really not only just saying, hey, look, I'm out here promoting my stuff, because you actually don't do a lot of promotion. You are really good about being very forward about communicating with other authors or other people about promoting their work, or or whatever. And that really struck me as something really cool and something I admired about you early on. And then to get to know you, just to know what a great spirit you have, and just the kind of person that you are. I mean, everybody needs someone like you in their life.
Oh, you're so sweet. I I don't know how to respond to that. I just that blows me away. And you work really hard at trying to be. You're gonna make me tear up. Try to be a good person, and it's not like I have to work at trying to be a good person. I mean, God gives you gifts, and one of them is encouragement. And um, it's nice to see that from someone else's perspective of what you think about me, because I don't think I'm all that at all. So just thank you for that. And to give you some feedback, I still think we're related.
Yeah.
I think we're distant cousins from a far tree. But I love the fact that you have this servant heart, that you also do the same thing. And I think that's why we connected, is because we both have that honorable intention to make sure that people know that they're on the right track and that
Yeah.
you're helpful. All I want to do is make sure that people can feel good about themselves and find the high points in their life and just point them out, because life is good.
Yeah.
And we all have so much going for us. And especially in times when, it's a crazy year, right?
Yeah.
So if I can help one person with, hey, great job, you've done a great job, you're on the right track, here's how you might tweak it. Sometimes it's a little constructive criticism, but I'm open to constructive criticism as well. I'm not all that. People all the time go, hey, how come you didn't have this character do that? Well, I mean, I don't know. I wrote her this way, but that's a really good idea. I should save that for
Yeah.
the next time I write a character along this same vein. So thank you. You're very, very kind, Steve.
Oh, well, I mean it 100%. And I really do think that that's your true calling, is you have such a great giving heart and great spirit, and it inspires. You're not only inspiring through your work, but also just how you show up, because you are authentic, in everything that you do, which I think is great. And, you mentioned, being there to contribute to other people, just to give them that line of encouragement. I think we all want it. We all desperately wish we had more of that. And we would like to be that contributor, but very few people step outside of their box to do it. So my hat's off to you, my friend, because you do a phenomenal job. You are the example by which a lot of people can learn from.
Thank you. That's really
You're welcome.
okay.
Well, so aside from this book that's coming out in early 21, what's the next big project for you?
I have so many storylines that I call it the simmering phase, that's just in the back of my mind. I'm a multi-genre author, and
Yep.
so a lot of people use different pen names, which I have a pen name. McKay is a pen name. Um, and they change their pen names for different genres. I don't want to change a pen name for a different genre. And I know that might turn some people off if they're a romance fan or a paranormal suspense, paranormal romance. I have a lot of different genres. If they go read something in mine and it's fantasy, it may turn them off and they may never read something in mine again. But I want to stick with the name I have. And there are some options that I want to explore when it comes to some different types of books.
Yeah.
And they all evolve from dreams, man. I'm not kidding you. Like, that's how one of the scripts I have is not even a book. It was just like God just hit download right there, and boom, within 2 weeks I had a script, because
That's awesome.
he gave me an idea. And it was the only time that I ever asked, do I need to put this in a book form or script form? And it was a clear nudge towards script, which is the one I was trying to convert to a book and
Yeah.
couldn't, because it's supposed to be a script and I should have listened. So yeah, just more, hopefully some more fun stories that people can get lost in. I think I've been told that's my gift. Again, people either really love them or they don't. I've got a different voice, and some people get it and some people don't. But
Yeah.
what I love is that I can connect people with my characters enough that they aren't ready to let go of them by the time they're done with the book.
Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. Well, for those of you that are interested in learning more about Kim and her work, KimberlyMcKayAuthor.com, right? Kimberly with an L-Y. KimberlyMcKayAuthor.com has all of your books, right? All of the books that you've produced out there. You've got a link on here to be able to order the books. You've got some coming soon. I even noticed that you even have an option for people to be early feedback loop, in terms of new content. So that's a really creative. I mentioned that actually when I saw it on your website to another author friend of mine. She was like, "That's genius." So
I stole it from someone else. It's not me.
Yeah, well, I'm crediting you because I saw it on yours. So that was awesome. I don't know that other person, but how else can people find you out on social media, etc.?
The Kimberly McKay, because there's a lot of Kimberly McKays out there, and you only have so many characters on Twitter to put stuff. So I just the Kimberly McKay, MCKAY, or you know what? Go to the website. There are links on the website.
Yeah, there are.
And those links will take you to any of my social media, because I am a little bit ADD and I have so much my brain at one time that not everything else fits at all times. So to give you my handles or my usernames, how old am I? I can't do that right now because I wasn't prepared for that. So just go to my website, click on the links. You'll get to Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, whatever.
That's awesome. Well, I'm one of the other people that would use handle, just so you know. I use two phrases that I think come from our generation, which is handle for all of our social platforms. And I always tell the boys, hey, I'm going to be busy. I'm cutting I'm cutting a podcast or I'm cutting a video. They're like,
awesome.
Cutting? What are you
cutting? You're producing.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's how we do it. That's just what I do.
Well, and if anyone wants to find the podcast too, they can just Google A Novel Thought, Kimberly McKay,
yes.
Or there's a link to it on my website as well.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal podcast, A Novel Thought. Everybody needs to check it out, subscribe to it. Not only will you learn more about Kim and what she does and in her approach, but the guests that she has are just phenomenal. I've really picked it up and really enjoyed it.
Like Steve Harper, guys, that guy.
That episode, you probably, you were awesome at that episode. I was just like, I felt like I talked your ear off. So
no, I was, like I said, one of my favorites. So
well, I appreciate that very much.
If your listeners haven't gone to see you on that, they at least just need to go listen just because of your episode.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I appreciate that very much, and it was an honor to be on your podcast for sure. And I'm grateful that you were on The Ripple Effect with me today, and I'm just so proud to know you. I'm so proud to call you a friend, and we will create some positive ripples, and we will eventually end up in the same town at the same time.
Yes.
Maybe at a Red River shootout one day. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, Boomer Sooner. I'm just going to say that. And the new Washington Redskins team. Ooh.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot you're a Redskins fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I wore I'll tell you another story another time. I know we're getting down on time here, but I do have a funny story about that for you later. Oh
yeah, I want to hear it for sure. Well, we definitely appreciate you being on today, and I look forward to having you back on at some point. I especially after you launch the new book. It's going to be 2 books, though, right, for the new year?
Well, after I finish this one, I'll start another one. It depends on how fast I get it finished.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. Well, knowing the way you operate and the way you work, I mean, you're gonna wake up one morning and it'll just be there.
It'll be there. Yeah. It's so funny.
Well, Kim, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us on the Ripple Effect podcast.
Thank you, Steve.